So here is another music moment. Thanks for joining me with this video so that we can be together with a hymn today. Have it challenge us, have it grow our faith, and we can still stay connected to one of these practices, the singing of hymns. It's a practice of our faith. So I was inspired in my choice for this week by participating in the national prayer service that took place on Thursday, this last week, the day after the inauguration of our president and vice president. There was this beautiful national prayer service, and if you haven't seen it, please go and watch it. You can see it. Washington National Cathedral put it all together, but it actually was participated in by people from all over the country, people with all kinds of different belief systems. Many different religions were represented, and it was a beautiful time for us to see all the ways that no matter if we are Jewish, no matter if we are Muslim, no matter if we are Native and Indigenous and have that and claim that to be our faith and religion, or we are Sikh, or we speak English, or we speak Spanish. It doesn't matter. We all pray to God. It was a beautiful, beautiful worship service. Lots of different kinds of music. It was all good. If you haven't seen it, please go to YouTube to the Washington National Cathedral, and I think that you can see it. The preacher on Thursday was Reverend Dr. William Barber III, who is a Disciples of Christ pastor in North Carolina. He has become nationally known because he is one of the people that has revived the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's work of the Poor People's Campaign. And he preaches. He is prophetic in what he says. And he called upon this hymn in his sermon. This hymn called God of Grace and God of Glory. It is in our hymnal, the Chalice Hymnal. It also is present in the New Century Hymnal, which is published by the United Church of Christ Publishers. The text for this was written by a man named Harry Emerson Fosdick. Harry Emerson Fosdick was also a prophetic preacher and a writer. He worked at Union Theological Seminary in New York, but he was a Presbyterian pastor. And he was brought up on charges, potentially heresy charges, in the schism that happened within the American Christian church in the 1920s and 1930s. It was known as the fundamentalists versus the modernists. And it broke denominations apart. So the Presbyterian church at that point broke into two. The Baptists had already broken into two over the Civil War, created the Southern Baptist Church and the American Baptist Church. This particular schism also broke apart the Lutheran Church, and I do believe that the Reformed Church went through a breaking apart as well. Harry Emerson Fosdick wrote this after he was forced to resign, being a pastor of a Presbyterian church in New York. He was forced to resign. And John D. Rockefeller Jr. Was very interested in the work of Mr. Fosdick and supported him and had the money to build a new church. And he built Riverside Church in the beautiful section of Manhattan as Morningside Heights. If you haven't ever been to that church and you're going to New York, see that church. It's beautiful. It is a United Church of Christ and an American Baptist church. And it sits right on the bank of the Hudson River. It's gorgeous, but Harry Emerson Fosdick was in fact the pastor there. And he wrote the words to this hymn in this time of great divide in the church. We are living in a time of great divide. I would say in the church and outside of the church, we are living in a time of that now, aren't we? If we can't agree on things, I think we can probably agree that we're in a time of great divide, right? So Dr. William Barber III called upon the words of this text last Thursday. The text says, "Grant us wisdom, grant us courage for the facing of this hour. How are we going to face this big breach, as it's known in Isaiah, that Reverend Dr. William Barber called upon, that we are called to be, by that prophet, repairers of the breach? How are we going to do it in this time that we're living in? As Christians who know that we follow the Prince of Peace, what are we going to do to repair what has happened? So this hymn has some hard things to swallow maybe in it, about how we need to listen differently, and we have to ask God for wisdom. Ask God for courage, because we can't just go on going on. We have to face it and change. Right? So this is the first verse of this hymn. God of grace and God of glory, on your people pour your power, crown your ancient church's story, bring its bud to glorious flower. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage for the facing of this hour, for the facing of this hour. Here's the third verse. Cure your children's warring madness, bend our pride to your control, shame our reckless, selfish gladness, rich in things and poor in soul. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage, make our broken spirits whole, make our broken spirits whole. That's calling us to action in lots of ways, and to reconsider things, I think. This is the last verse. Save us from weak resignation to the evils we deplore. Let the search for your salvation be your glory evermore. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage, serving you whom we adore, serving you whom we adore. I hope you've enjoyed this time with this hymn, God of Grace and God of Glory, learning a little bit more about Harry Emerson Fosdick, who wrote the words. We are often challenged by the text of hymns. There's theology and there's a call, prophetic call in many of them for us to do, to work, to follow. May this particular music moment help you do those things and come closer to the way of Jesus here on earth. Thanks for joining in.